First Contact's folly. The great chamber of the Stellar Federation fell silent as Administrator Venra activated the holographic display. The massive crystalline walls reflected countless points of light from the gathered representatives of over 300 spacefaring civilizations. Each had earned their place through technological achievement, military might, or economic power. None had achieved it quite like humanity was about to. Esteemed members of the Council, Venra's melodic voice carried through the chamber, their iridescent scales shifting colors with each word. The Discovery Division has completed its assessment of Solar System 7249, locally known as Sol. The primitive species we observed there has progressed from basic tool use to crude spaceflight in merely 12,000 years. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Most species took at least 50,000 years to achieve the same feat. Senior Counselor Zixtel's tentacles writhed in amusement. 12,000 years. They must have stumbled upon some ancient technology. No species evolves that quickly on their own. Dr. Carolyn, head of Xenosociology at the Discovery Division, stepped forward. Her holographic form flickered slightly as she addressed the Council. With respect, Counselor, they didn't stumble upon anything. They invented it all. Every piece of technology, every scientific breakthrough, it's all their own work, and that's what makes them remarkable. Remarkable, Zixtel scoffed. They haven't even achieved faster than light travel. Their vessels are confined to their solar system. They communicate using primitive radio waves. What could possibly be remarkable about that? Dr. Lin's expression remained neutral, but her voice carried an edge of urgency. It's not what they've achieved that's remarkable, Counselor. It's how they achieved it. Humans don't develop technology like other species. They don't wait for necessity. They imagine something, then they build it. They dream of possibilities, then they make them real. The chamber's atmosphere shifted as data streams appeared around Dr. Lin's hologram. Look at their entertainment media. They've imagined thousands of ways first contact might occur. They've simulated countless scenarios of interstellar war and peace. They've mentally prepared for meeting advanced civilizations for centuries before even reaching their own moon. Administrator Venra interrupted, their scales turning a cautionary shade of amber. Dr. Lin, are you suggesting we should fear a species that spends its time creating fictional scenarios? I'm suggesting we should respect them, Dr. Lin countered. While we watched them, they were watching the stars. While we discussed their primitive nature, they were building defense systems we couldn't detect. They've hidden their true capabilities so well that our initial surveys missed 90% of their military installations. That brought stunned silence to the chamber. Zixtel's tentacles stopped moving entirely. Impossible. Our scanning technology is the most advanced in known space. And yet, Dr. Lin continued, bringing up new data streams, we only discovered their lunar base because of a lucky solar flare that temporarily disrupted their cloaking technology. We still don't know the full extent of their Mars operations. They're not primitive, Counselor. They're careful. They're prepared. And most importantly, they're united in a way we've never seen before. The senior counselor's voice turned cold. You sound like you admire these creatures, Dr. Lin. Need I remind you that uncontrolled technological development is a threat to galactic stability? That's why the Federation exists, to guide species toward proper development. With respect, Dr. Lin's hologram straightened. I don't admire them. I recognize them for what they are. The first species we've encountered that not only expects to meet advanced alien civilizations, but has been actively preparing for every possible outcome of such meetings. They're not following our expected development pattern because they're not developing blindly. They're developing with purpose. Enough. Zixtel's tentacles lashed out, disrupting nearby holograms. These humans are clearly a Class 3 civilization at best. They will be contacted, evaluated, and guided according to Federation protocols. Their peculiar habits and paranoid preparations are irrelevant. As the Council moved to vote on humanity's classification, Dr. Lin made one final attempt. At least consider raising their threat assessment level. Their military spending alone is insignificant compared to any spacefaring civilization. Venra cut her off. The matter is decided. Humanity will be contacted according to standard procedures for primitive species. Their quaint preparations will make an interesting footnote in the contact report, nothing more. As her hologram faded, Dr. Lin transmitted one last message to her research team. Begin Protocol Omega. They're not going to listen. We need to be ready when humanity surprises them, because they will surprise them. They always do. In the coming months, the Federation would learn just how right she was, and just how wrong they had been to dismiss her warnings. Humanity wasn't just ready for first contact, they had been rehearsing for it their entire history. The silent preparation. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of Orbital Station Hyperion, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath her. Most people saw beauty in that blue marble wrapped in white clouds. She saw vulnerability. The alert on her tablet hadn't changed in the past hour. Unknown artificial objects detected beyond Kuiper Belt. Origin: non-terrestrial. They're early. Admiral James Harrison's voice came from behind her. The elderly officer moved to stand beside her, his weathered face reflected in the reinforced glass. Intelligence suggested we had at least another decade before first contact. Intelligence also suggested they'd approach diplomatically. Sarah replied, bringing up a holographic display showing the incoming vessel's trajectories. Those formations are military standard. They're not here to talk, sir. Harrison nodded, unsurprised. Activate Protocol Phantom. All stations, all colonies. Let's show our visitors exactly what they expect to see. Across the solar system, humanity's greatest deception began. Orbital stations shimmered and seemed to degrade, their outer shells transforming to appear decades less advanced. State-of-the-art weapon systems disappeared behind false panels designed to emit primitive radio signatures. The Mars colonies, gleaming cities beneath transparent domes, flickered and changed into crude prefabricated structures. In underground facilities on Earth, Luna, and Mars, humanity's real capabilities hummed to life. Quantum computers processed vast amounts of data, analyzing every aspect of the approaching fleet. AI systems that had spent decades simulating alien encounters began adapting their strategies based on real data. Fascinating, Dr. Elena Rodriguez murmured, studying the sensor readings in her laboratory beneath the lunar surface. Their technology is advanced, but it's predictable, linear. They developed everything in sequence, never skipping steps. Harrison's hologram appeared in her lab. Your assessment, Doctor. Elena gestured at her data models. They're Type IO civilization, technically more advanced than us in most areas. But there are gaps in their development. They never had to solve certain problems because they had time to work around them. We didn't have that luxury. Vulnerabilities. Several. Elena highlighted specific sections of the alien vessel's scans. Their shields are impressive, but they're designed to handle known weapons. They've never faced quantum phase torpedoes because they never developed them. The technology was too unstable. We made it work because we had to. In the asteroid belt, Commander David Okoro supervised the final camouflage of humanity's primary shipyards. Massive fabrication facilities, capable of producing warships in days, vanished behind electromagnetic screens that made them appear to be nothing more than mining operations. Status report, he commanded, watching as his crews worked with practiced precision. All military assets are masked, sir, his XO reported. Civilian infrastructure has been downgraded in appearance. We're transmitting appropriate EM signatures to match late 21st century technology levels. David allowed himself a small smile. And our guests. Still on course. Their scan patterns suggest they believe their presence is undetected. They're not even looking for our stealth systems. In the depths of Europa's ocean, Dr. Maya Patel monitored the alien communications they'd begun intercepting. Her team had cracked their encryption within hours. Another advantage of humanity's paranoid preparation. "They're talking about us," she reported to the United Earth Defense Council. "They're calling us primitive. Their assessment puts us at least a century behind our actual capabilities." "Perfect," General Sarah Wong replied from her command center in Beijing. Status of the defense grid. Ghost protocol active across all sectors, Maya confirmed. As far as they can tell, Earth's only protection is a scattered network of basic satellites and a few dozen chemical rockets. The quantum defense web is invisible to their sensors. Back on Hyperion, Sarah Chen watched the final preparations with a mixture of pride and tension. Humanity had spent generations preparing for this moment, ever since they first looked up at the stars and realized they might not be alone. They had developed technology in secret, built defenses in shadow, and trained for countless scenarios. "Message from the approaching fleet," her communications officer announced. "They're identifying themselves as the Stellar Federation. They're demanding our immediate surrender and integration into their civilization." Admiral Harrison straightened his uniform. "Right on schedule. Send no response. Let them think their transmissions are too advanced for us to understand." "Sir," Sarah turned to face her commanding officer, "are we certain about this course of action? We could attempt diplomatic contact, reveal our true capabilities, try to establish peaceful relations." Harrison's expression softened slightly. "We could, but they've already shown their true intentions. They came in force, expecting no resistance. They decided what we were without bothering to look closely enough. Now they'll learn what humanity does to those who underestimate us." Throughout the solar system, humanity waited in their hidden fortresses and cloaked ships. They had spent centuries imagining this moment, preparing for it, building their technology and defenses with this day in mind. They had unified their species, settled their differences, and focused their considerable creativity and resourcefulness on a single goal: survival. The Stellar Federation was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their ability to imagine threats and prepare for them long before they became real. They had spent generations getting ready for this moment, and they were ready. Testing the waters. The Federation battlecruiser Eternal Dawn dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, its crystalline hull gleaming under the distant sunlight. Commander Zexnar stood on his command deck, multiple eyes scanning the tactical displays with barely concealed disdain. "Primitive defenses, exactly as expected," he announced to his bridge crew. "A handful of chemical-propelled satellites, some basic orbital platforms. These humans won't even realize what's happening until we're in orbit." His tactical officer, Lieutenant Merle, seemed less certain. "Sir, something about their deployment pattern seems deliberate, almost like." "Like what, Lieutenant?" "Like primitives attempting strategy." Zexnar's scales rippled with amusement. "Launch the first wave. Standard subjugation protocol." 20 sleek Federation fighters emerged from the Eternal Dawn's launch bays, their energy drives leaving trails of blue fire as they accelerated toward Earth. On their tactical displays, human defense installations appeared as crude satellites and antiquated space stations. Aboard Hyperion Station, Captain Sarah Chen watched the approaching fighters with practiced calm. "They're following textbook invasion patterns," she noted. "Exactly like our simulations predicted." Admiral Harrison nodded. "Spring the first trap. Let's see how they handle being surprised." Sarah transmitted a single coded burst. Throughout the solar system, hidden quantum transmitters activated. The Federation fighters suddenly found their navigation systems scrambled, their sensors showing phantom targets appearing and disappearing at random. "Impossible," Zexnar shouted as his fighters reported the anomalies. "Their technology level couldn't possibly." He froze mid-sentence as new contacts appeared on his displays. What had appeared to be simple communications satellites were transforming, outer shells falling away to reveal advanced weapon systems. "Full combat alert," he ordered, but he was already too late. The first wave of Federation fighters, disoriented and separated, fell prey to weapons they hadn't even known to look for. Quantum phase torpedoes, invisible to their sensors until the moment of impact, bypassed their shields completely. Advanced EMP weapons, operating on principles the Federation had never mastered, shut down their systems with surgical precision. In the asteroid belt, Commander David Okoro gave the order they'd been waiting for. Unmask the fleet. Show them what humanity's been hiding. The Federation sensors lit up with hundreds of new contacts as humanity's true military forces revealed themselves. Ships emerged from within asteroids, their hull designs unlike anything the Federation had encountered. They didn't follow the elegant crystalline aesthetic of Federation vessels or the crude industrial look of what the aliens had expected from humans. Instead, they represented something new: function over form, efficiency over beauty, survival over style. Status report. Zexnar demanded as his tactical displays filled with new threats. Sir, Mural's voice shook slightly. We're detecting energy signatures we've never seen before. They're ships. They're not following any known development pattern. It's like they skipped entire stages of technological evolution. In her lunar laboratory, Dr. Rodriguez monitored the Federation's responses with keen interest. They're trying to adapt their shields to our weapons, she reported to Admiral Harrison. But they can't. They never developed quantum phase technology because they considered it too unstable. We made it work because we had to plan for exactly this scenario. The Eternal Dawn launched its second wave, this time comprising their heaviest fighters equipped with their most powerful weapons. They lasted 30 seconds longer than the first wave. How? Zexnar demanded, watching his elite forces being systematically dismantled by weapons that shouldn't exist. How did they hide all this? Our surveys showed nothing but primitive technology. On Earth's dark side, General Wong activated humanity's ground-based defenses. Massive installations emerged from beneath oceans, deserts, and ice caps. Launch the drones, she ordered. Thousands of small, highly maneuverable craft swarmed from hidden bases, their quantum drives allowing them to ignore conventional physics. The Federation fleet found itself surrounded by an enemy they had drastically underestimated. Human ships moved in patterns their tactical computers couldn't predict, using technologies that violated what the Federation considered possible. Their weapons ignored shields designed to stop any known form of attack. Their electronic warfare systems shut down Federation computers with ease. Full retreat, Zexnar finally ordered, but even that proved more difficult than expected. Human ships had positioned themselves at strategic points throughout the system, cutting off standard escape routes. The Federation vessels found themselves herded into killing zones, forced to fight on humanity's terms. Admiral Harrison watched from Hyperion as the Federation fleet's formation crumbled. Send the message, he ordered. Let's see if they're ready to talk now. The transmission that reached the Eternal Dawn was clear and precise. This is Admiral James Harrison of the United Earth Defense Force. Your invasion force has been defeated. Your technology has been analyzed. Your tactical patterns have been decoded. You have two choices: surrender and open diplomatic channels, or continue fighting and lose your entire fleet. You have 5 minutes to decide. Zexnar stared at the message in disbelief. Everything he had known about technological progression, about military doctrine, about the nature of primitive species, had been proven wrong in less than an hour of combat. These humans hadn't just prepared for first contact, they had prepared for war, developing technologies and strategies specifically designed to counter advanced civilizations. Signal our surrender, he ordered quietly, and send word to the Federation Council. Tell them we severely underestimated the humans. Tell them we never saw their true capabilities until it was too late. As Federation ships began powering down their weapons, Sarah Chen turned to Admiral Harrison. They'll be back, she said, with a larger fleet next time. Harrison smiled grimly. Of course they will. And we'll be ready. We always are. Ripples across the stars. The Federation Council chamber had never been so chaotic. Representatives from hundreds of worlds shouted over each other as the full report of the Sol system encounter played on the massive holographic displays. The images of Federation warships being systematically dismantled by supposedly primitive humans sent shockwaves through the assembled dignitaries. High Counselor Zixtel's tentacles writhed in agitation as he faced the assembly. Order. We must maintain order. But the footage continued to play. Human vessels emerging from impossible hiding places, weapons that ignored the most advanced Federation shields, defenses that had been invisible until the moment they were needed. Dr. Carolyn stood calmly in the center of the chaos, her hologram a steady presence amid the turmoil. I warned you, she said simply. I told you they were different. Different. A representative from the Centaurian Alliance rose, his crystalline form glowing with anger. They deceived us. They hid their true capabilities. They violated every principle of technological development. No, Dr. Lind corrected. They survived. They did what every species in this chamber failed to do. They looked to the stars and prepared for every possibility, not just the ones they hoped for. On the outer rim of Federation space, news of humanity's victory spread like wildfire. On the mining world of Karis Prime, workers gathered in secret to watch smuggled footage of the battle. They saw how human ships, smaller and theoretically less advanced, had outmaneuvered the Federation's finest. They did it, whispered Forge Master Vix, her mechanical eyes whirring as she analyzed the battles. They actually stood up to the Federation. And won. In the diplomatic district of New Singapore on Earth, Ambassador Helena Santos prepared to address the first official gathering of alien representatives. The room was tense. Many of these diplomats represented worlds that had, until recently, viewed Earth as a primitive backwater. Let me be clear, Helena began, her voice firm but not unkind. Humanity never wanted war. We prepared for it because we had to. Now we offer something different. Partnership. The alien diplomats stirred uncomfortably. A tall, ethereal being from the Andromedans spoke up. Partnership, after you humiliated the Federation fleet. We defended ourselves, Helena corrected. And now we're offering to share that knowledge. Not our weapons, our ways of thinking. Our ability to imagine possibilities and prepare for them. Our drive to innovate not because it's safe or approved, but because it might be needed. In the Thylaxian Empire, ancient rivals of the Federation, the Empress herself watched the battle recordings with her advisors. Fascinating, she mused, her crystalline form refracting light across the throne room. They developed technologies we never considered because we thought they were impossible. Her chief scientist, a being of pure energy contained in a mechanical shell, spoke up. It's not just their technology, your radiance. It's their methodology. They don't follow conventional paths of development. They imagine what they need, then find ways to make it work. Back on Earth, Dr. Elena Rodriguez hosted a delegation of alien scientists in her lunar facility. The visitors moved through her laboratory in stunned silence, examining technologies that shouldn't exist according to their understanding of scientific progression. How did you stabilize quantum phase particles? One asked, studying a torpedo casing. Our calculations showed it was impossible. Elena smiled. We started with the impossible and worked backwards. When you spend centuries preparing for a fight you hope will never come, you learn to think differently about what's possible. In the Federation's military command, Admiral Venra faced a crisis. Across Federation space, subject worlds were becoming restless. They had seen humans defeat the undefeatable. The careful hierarchy of technological advancement that had kept the Federation in power for millennia was crumbling. They're receiving transmissions from Earth, his intelligence officer reported. The humans are offering to share their defensive technologies with any world that wants them. Not their weapons, just protection. Venra's scales turned a deep shade of blue, worry. They're more dangerous than we imagined. Not because of their weapons, but because they're showing others how to think differently. In the asteroid belt, Commander David Okoro led another tour for alien military observers. Their questions had shifted from how humans had hidden their capabilities to something more fundamental, how they had imagined them in the first place. "Your ships," a Federation tactical officer noted, "they're designed to counter our specific advantages. How did you know what to prepare for?" David gestured to a massive database display. "Science fiction," he said simply. "For centuries, we imagined meeting advanced aliens, sometimes as friends, sometimes as enemies. We didn't know who we'd meet or what they'd bring, so we prepared for everything we could imagine. And humans, it turns out, can imagine quite a lot." The ripples continued to spread. On countless worlds, people began looking at the stars differently. The Federation's grip on technological development began to loosen as species realized there were other paths to advancement. Humanity's victory hadn't just changed the balance of power, it had changed how an entire galaxy thought about progress. In her office overlooking the Pacific, Sarah Chen reviewed reports from across human space. Federation probe ships kept testing their borders, looking for weaknesses. They wouldn't find any. Humanity hadn't stopped preparing just because they'd won one battle. "They still don't quite understand, do they?" Admiral Harrison mused, looking at the latest intelligence reports. "No," Sarah agreed. "They think our victory was about technology or tactics. They haven't realized it was about imagination, about being willing to look into the darkness between the stars and prepare for whatever might emerge, about turning fear into readiness and readiness into strength." The galaxy was changing, and humanity, the species that had hidden in plain sight, that had prepared in silence, that had imagined both the best and worst of what the universe might bring, was at the heart of that change. They had shown that being prepared didn't mean being paranoid, that being strong didn't mean being aggressive. They had shown that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was simply the ability to imagine what might be coming and be ready when it arrived. A new dawn. 5 years after humanity's dramatic emergence onto the galactic stage, the Federation Council chamber looked very different. The ornate thrones that had once separated senior members from junior species were gone, replaced by a circular arrangement where representatives sat as equals. At the center of this transformation stood a human woman, Dr. Kara Lynn, now serving as Earth's first ambassador to the reformed Galactic Assembly. The old Federation made a crucial mistake. She addressed the gathered representatives. They assumed there was only one path to advancement, only one way to grow. Humanity proved otherwise, and in doing so, we opened the door for something greater. The changes were visible throughout known space. On the mining world of Kara's Prime, human engineers worked alongside local technicians, teaching them not just how to use advanced technology, but how to imagine new solutions to old problems. The quantum shields that had once been Earth's secret now protected dozens of worlds, freely shared with any civilization that sought to defend rather than conquer. In orbit above Mars, Admiral Harrison guided his ship through a joint training exercise. Federation vessels flew alongside human ships, their crews learning from each other. The Federation had brought centuries of space-faring experience. Humanity had brought innovation and unexpected approaches. Together, they were creating something new. "Watch how they adapt," Harrison commented to his Federation counterpart, Admiral Venra, as their crews tackled a complex tactical scenario. "They're not just copying our methods, they're combining them with their own ideas." Venra's scales shifted to a thoughtful green. "That's what we fail to understand about humans. You never simply adopt technology, you transform it. You see possibilities we miss because we're too focused on what we know works." Deep in the Andromeda Research Institute, Dr. Elena Rodriguez led a mixed team of human and alien scientists. They weren't just studying technology anymore. They were exploring new ways of thinking about scientific advancement itself. Impossible is just another word for hasn't been done yet, Elena explained to her colleagues as they tackled problems that had stumped the galaxy's finest minds for generations. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our preparation. It's our refusal to accept limitations without questioning them. The greatest change, however, was in how species across the galaxy had begun to look at the stars. The fear of the unknown that had driven the Federation to control and restrict development was being replaced by something else: curiosity, imagination, and careful preparation. On Earth, Sarah Chen had been promoted to Fleet Admiral, overseeing humanity's growing space force. But it wasn't just a military anymore. It was an exploration fleet, a diplomatic corps, a scientific expedition, all in one. They still maintained their defenses, still prepared for threats, but they also reached out with open hands. "We're detecting another signal from beyond the galaxy's edge," her sensor officer reported one quiet evening. Unknown origin, unknown purpose. 5 years ago, such news would have sent the Federation into a panic. Now, Sarah watched as human and alien crew members worked together, analyzing, theorizing, preparing, but not fearing. "Launch the diplomatic probes," she ordered, "and the defense platforms. Be ready for anything. Hope for the best." In the new Singapore diplomatic quarter, Ambassador Helena Santos hosted a gathering of representatives from formerly subjugated worlds. They weren't discussing weapons or defenses anymore. They were sharing stories, comparing cultures, imagining futures. "Humanity showed us something vital," the Centaurian representative observed. "Strength doesn't come from having the most advanced technology or the largest fleet. It comes from being ready for change, from being willing to imagine both wonderful and terrible possibilities, and preparing for both." The galaxy had entered a new age. The rigid hierarchy of the Federation had given way to a more dynamic civilization, one that valued innovation and imagination alongside stability and tradition. Humanity's emergence hadn't just changed the balance of power. It had changed how an entire galaxy thought about progress, about preparation, about possibility. In her private study on Luna, Dr. Lin reviewed the changes of the past 5 years. The Federation's fall had been replaced not by chaos, but by cooperation. Worlds that had once competed now collaborated, sharing knowledge while maintaining their unique approaches to advancement. "We did more than survive first contact," she wrote in her personal log. "We showed the galaxy a new way forward, not through dominance or control, but through imagination, preparation, and the willingness to face the unknown with both caution and hope." Outside her window, Earth shone blue and white against the black of space. Ships of various designs moved between planets, some elegant Federation crystals, some practical human vessels, some combining both aesthetics into something new. They were no longer just exploring space. They were exploring possibilities. Humanity had emerged from hiding not as conquerors or victims, but as teachers and partners. They had shown that being prepared for the worst didn't mean you couldn't hope for the best. That strength and wisdom weren't measured by age or tradition, but by the ability to adapt, to imagine, to grow. The stars no longer seemed quite so dark or empty. In the space between them, countless civilizations looked outward with new eyes, ready for whatever mysteries the universe might reveal. They had learned from humanity that the future belonged not to those who waited for it, but to those who imagined it and prepared for it. And somewhere, in the vast darkness between galaxies, something new was stirring. But this time, the civilizations of the Milky Way weren't hiding or controlling or fearing. This time, they were ready. Together,